A predatory audit can begin before the conversation feels dangerous. To a psychopath, the first 60 seconds are not just small talk. They are a scan. Not after the insult, not after the favor, not after the boundary push, before that. In the first 60 seconds, they are watching the small things most people ignore. How fast you answer, how quickly you smile when something feels off, whether your eyes drop when pressure enters the room, whether you explain before anyone asks you to explain. That is the scan, not your personality, your reaction pattern, because they are not looking for kindness, they are looking for leverage. A healthy person scans for comfort. A predator scans for leverage. They want to know one thing: can this person be moved? So they watch for 5 signals. Do you rush to fill silence? Do you apologize when nothing is your fault? Do you soften your no before they challenge it? Do you laugh when someone lowers your status? Do you give extra information just to prove you are reasonable? One signal does not prove anything, but a consistent pattern gives them usable data. And if those signals repeat, they may not see you as kind. They may see you as readable. And once you become readable, the scan changes. Now they are not just talking to you. They are testing what works. The selection is over. Now the leverage begins. Watch how they turn those 5 signals into a predatory audit. Signal 1. The information vacuum. Maybe you have felt this before. Someone asks a question, then goes quiet. Not a normal quiet. A quiet that makes you feel like you are supposed to keep talking. So you do. You explain more than you planned to. You add context no one asked for. You make the room comfortable again. That is the information vacuum. It is what happens when silence makes you feel responsible. They ask a slightly personal question. They make a strange comment. They pause after a request. And instead of letting the silence sit, you rush to fill it. To a normal person, that may look polite. But inside a predatory audit, it gives them data. They learn silence moves you. They learn discomfort makes you talk. They learn that if they wait long enough, you may start handing them information just to make the room feel normal again. This does not mean every quiet person is dangerous. It does not mean every pause is manipulation. But when silence appears right after pressure and someone watches what it does to you, pay attention. The shield is simple: pause before answering. Let silence stay neutral. You do not have to rush into the gap just because someone opened it. Then they watch how quickly guilt reaches your mouth. That is the compliance pulse. Maybe they ask for something small. Maybe they make you feel slightly inconvenient. Maybe they act disappointed before you have even answered. And suddenly, you hear yourself saying, "Sorry," even though you did nothing wrong. That apology may feel harmless and it may even feel mature, but to the wrong person, it can become a signal. They are not hearing, "This person is polite." They are hearing, "Guilt has access." A healthy person accepts your apology with care. A predator studies what made you give it. That is the difference. The issue is not kindness, the issue is automatic guilt. If you apologize before you decide whether you actually crossed a line, you are not communicating respect. You may be giving them a button to press later, so separate politeness from guilt. You can be respectful without confessing to a crime you did not commit. You can say, "I understand." You can say, "I hear you." You can say, "That does not work for me." But do not turn every boundary into an apology. Because once someone learns guilt moves you, they do not need to argue with your boundary. They only need to make you feel bad for having one. Then comes the softened no. This is one of the biggest leverage points. You say no. But before the no has time to stand, you start decorating it. "I'm sorry. I just have a lot going on. I hope that makes sense. I would, but maybe another time." And again, none of those words are automatically wrong. With healthy people, context can be kind. But with the wrong person, too much context becomes a map. They learn where your no is weakest. They learn whether pressure turns your boundary into a negotiation. They learn whether your need to be understood is stronger than your need to be clear. A predator does not always fight your no directly. Sometimes they just look for the apology attached to it. Because the apology tells them where to push. The long explanation tells them what story you are afraid they will believe about you. And once they know the story, they can use it. They can make you feel selfish. They can make you feel harsh. They can make you feel difficult. They can make you defend a boundary that did not require a defense. So keep the no short. Use neutral precision. Give the answer. Withhold the why until trust has been earned. You do not owe someone a full emotional report just because they dislike your boundary. Then they test your status, and this one often looks like humor, a small joke at your expense, a comment that cuts a little too deep, a tease that lowers you just enough for everyone to feel it, but not enough for you to easily call it out. Then they watch. Not whether the joke was funny, whether you helped them make it safe. Maybe this happened to you. Someone said something sharp, everyone looked around, and somehow you became the one trying to keep the room comfortable. You laughed, you smiled, you acted like it did not matter, but your body knew it did. That is usable data. Because if someone can lower your status and you help protect the room from the awkwardness, they learn something. They learn you may protect the peace even when the peace is being used against you. Not every joke is an attack. Not every awkward comment is predatory. But when the joke lowers you and the person watches whether you will absorb it, that is a signal worth noticing. The shield is not to explode. The shield is not to perform outrage. The shield is to stop rewarding disrespect with comfort. Pause. Look. Let the joke sit. Sometimes the strongest response is not a comeback. It is refusing to rescue the person who just tested your status. The audit is almost complete. They are not looking for signs anymore. They are harvesting leverage. If enough signals appear together, you are no longer just a stranger in the room. You are a target in progress. That sounds intense, but this is the part people miss. The scan is not about your past. It is a stress test of your future compliance. They are not asking, who is this person? They are asking, what pressure will work later? And that leads to the data leak. The disclosure audit. This is when you give away too much information before trust has been earned. Your schedule, your guilt, your fears, your family stress, your insecurities, your reasons, your private context, your need to prove that your answer makes sense. You may think you are being open, you may think you are building connection, and with a healthy person, openness can build trust. But with someone looking for leverage, early disclosure can become a file. A file on what makes you feel guilty. A file on what makes you defensive. A file on what makes you explain. A file on which pressure points make you soften. This is why over-explaining is not just a communication habit. Around the wrong person, it becomes a data leak. You are not just telling them why you said no. You may be handing them the map to your guilt, and once they have the map, they know where to return. So regulate your data flow. Give the answer, but withhold the why until trust has been earned. That is not cold, that is clean. You are not hiding. You are refusing to make your inner world available to someone who has not shown they can handle it responsibly. Now watch what happens after the scan. If guilt moved you, they use guilt. If silence moved you, they use silence. If confusion moved you, they create confusion. If status pressure moved you, they hide more disrespect inside humor. If over-explaining gave them access, they keep asking questions that force you to justify yourself. This is how the scan becomes the first test. The pressure does not appear randomly, it follows the data. That is why the early moments matter. Not because one awkward reaction makes you a target, but because a repeated reaction pattern tells the wrong person where to start. The first test is usually small. A second request after you already answered. A joke that gets slightly sharper. A personal question that comes too soon. A disappointed pause after your boundary. A little pressure disguised as confusion. And if you treat each moment as separate, you miss the pattern. But if you see the scan behind the moments, everything changes. You stop asking, why are they acting strange? You start asking, what reaction are they trying to produce? That question gives you distance, and distance protects your judgment. Now comes the diagnostic payoff. You do not need a dramatic comeback. You do not need to accuse them. You do not need to prove they are a psychopath. In fact, do not try. The goal is not to win an argument. The goal is to stop feeding the scan. Use this script. I noticed the focus shifted to my reaction rather than my answer. Why is that? That script works because it does not attack. It observes. It does not say, you are manipulating me. It says, I see where the attention moved. And that matters. A predator wants you inside the scan, explaining, apologizing, softening, laughing, defending, giving more data. The diagnostic script pulls you out of the scan and makes the scan visible. Now the focus is not on whether you are too sensitive. It is not on whether you are difficult. It is not on whether your boundary hurt their feelings. The focus returns to the pattern. Why did the conversation shift from my answer to my reaction? That is the mirror, and for the wrong person, a mirror is more uncomfortable than an argument. Because an argument gives them motion. A mirror gives them exposure. Now their reaction becomes data too. A healthy person may pause, they may clarify, and they may say, "You're right, I did push that." They may not love being noticed, but they can usually return to the issue without punishing you for seeing it. A controlling person often reacts differently. They mock the observation. They call you paranoid. They say you are overthinking. They accuse you of being dramatic. They try to make the act of noticing feel like the real problem. That response is not a reason to defend yourself. That response is information. Do not argue with the reaction. Record it. Because once someone punishes you for noticing the pattern, they have told you something important. They were not only interested in your answer, they were interested in your availability. And when you became less available, they felt the loss of access. That is access denied. You did not become aggressive. You just stopped leaking usable data. That is the real protection. Not performing confidence, not trying to look untouchable, not turning every conversation into a battle. The safest person in the room is not always the loudest. It is often the person who can stay calm without becoming readable. The person who can pause without filling the silence, say no without decorating it. Notice disrespect without rewarding it. Give an answer without handing over the whole map. And name a pattern without getting pulled into a fight. The first 60 seconds do not reveal everything, but they can reveal what someone is trying to measure. A healthy person uses those moments to understand comfort. A predator uses them to locate leverage. So the next time a conversation feels normal, but your body starts noticing pressure before your mind has words for it, slow down. Do not rush to repair the room. Do not over-explain your boundary. Do not apologize for existing in your own no. Pause. Observe. Regulate your data, and when the focus shifts from your answer to your reaction, ask the question that flips the scan. I noticed the focus shifted to my reaction rather than my answer. Why is that? Because the moment you stop being scanned without awareness, the entire interaction changes. And the person who was measuring you now has to deal with being seen. If you want to understand what happens after the scan is complete, watch the next video on the screen. The first test psychopaths use before they target you.